powerful cyclone rips through Madagascar, killing more than 24 people. Examining the potentially harmful impact of social media on children. We'll have a report. And the coolest cutting-edge tech on display at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with another voyage that turned deadly for migrants. Up to 64 people died off the coast of Libya over the weekend when their rickety boat sank. 86 people were pulled from the flimsy rubber dinghy and 88 bodies, all women, were recovered. Survivors say the boat had been carrying 150 migrants, as many of the dead vanished beneath the waves, many of them children. The Italian Coast Guard says the migrants had been spotted on Saturday morning by a plane patrolling the seas on behalf of the European anti-smuggling operation. The International Organization for Migration estimates that 2,800 migrants died last year as they tried to reach Italy from North Africa. The majority of migrants are Africans fleeing war and poverty back home. A devastating cyclone ripped across eastern Madagascar over the weekend, killing at least 29 people and injuring at least 3 others. Now, authorities say 2 people are reported missing. Tropical cyclone Ava hit mostly the eastern coast of the island with wind speeds of between 140 and 190 kilometers per hour. Among those killed were 8 people of a family that had been at a funeral vigil on Sunday when their house was hit by a landslide. According to the National Office of Risk and Disaster Management, more than 13,000 people were displaced by the cyclone. Madagascar was hit by cyclone last March, and at least 78 people died in that storm. Well, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has announced that more than 260,000 Salvadorians living in America will be stripped of their temporary protected status, or TPS. Homeland Security ruled that conditions in El Salvador have improved enough for a return home. The end of TPS for Salvadorian communities comes in the footsteps of similar decisions regarding beneficiaries from Haiti, Nicaragua, and Sudan.
When he was 15, Jose Hercules began his journey to the U.S. with just one objective.
The goal was always to work. I hadn't even thought about studying, just working.
Hercules arrived alone and undocumented. After some odd jobs, he found his passion in gardening, gained a work permit through TPS, and worked his way up the economic ladder. Today, he has a business of his own, including 2 full-time employees, that allows him to provide for his wife, a Salvadoran American, and his 2 U.S.-born boys, ages 12 and 3. But the program that has allowed him and more than 260,000 Salvadoran nationals to live and work legally in the country since 2001 will end in September 2019, the Trump administration announced. Hercules understands the risks he faces if forced to start over again.
In our country, there's a lot of crime. Everything is difficult. One can't live well like here, or as peacefully. Above all else, there's work. To be able to work and provide a better life for my family.
It would cost roughly $7,000 in U.S. legal fees, he estimates, to get the work permit he may now lose if he is unable to secure an alternative legal status. But still, the family is steadfast.
I go wherever my husband goes, wherever my kids, and we'll go together. If we have no choice, this is what we'll have to do.
In May, when the status of TPS recipients from Haiti was in limbo, then U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security and current White House Chief of Staff John Kelly stressed that the program was not intended to be open-ended.
By definition, TPS is temporary, meant to be temporary.
But El Salvador's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hugo Martinez, has a backup plan to implement before TPS officially ends.
With that timeline, there's a window of opportunity to lobby consistently for legislation in favor of our fellow TPS citizens.
But for families like the Hercules, this effort is unlikely to be reassuring. For reporter Giselle Tobias in Centerville, Virginia, Ramon Taylor, VOA News.
Well, now to a modern-day case of slavery. U.S. authorities say an American couple is heading to jail after holding a Nigerian woman captive as an unpaid maid and nanny for 2 years in Houston, Texas suburb. Officials say the couple restricted her movements and threatened her if she objected. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office says they will now pay restitution of more than $100,000 to the victim, whom they lured from Lagos with promises of wages that were never paid. Chandra Sumbudu, 49, pleaded guilty to a forced labor documents charge, and her husband, Chudi Sumbudu, 57, pleaded guilty to visa fraud. The victim was rescued in October 2015 after a tip to the International Human Trafficking Resource Center. The Subudus will each serve a sentence of 7 months in jail and 7 months home confinement. Nigerian police fired tear gas and clashed with protesters during a demonstration by Shia Muslims in the Nigerian town of Abuja on Monday. The protesters called for the release of their leader, Ibrahim El-Zakizaki, claiming he is suffering from bad health in prison and that he is being denied treatment. Nigerian troops arrested El-Zakizaki, the leader of a minority Shia Muslim sect, and killed his deputy and chief spokesman in raids in 2015. El-Zakizaki remains in custody. A nation of 180 million Nigerian combines a predominantly Christian South and mainly Sunni Muslim North. Shiites are estimated at less than 4 million. That's according to a 2009 report by the US-based Pew Research Center. Now, a 22-year-old Iranian protester has died in custody, intensifying fears of a repeat of the prisoner abuse that followed similar protests in 2009. Two Iranian lawmakers confirmed the detainee's death, but the circumstances of the incident were not immediately clear. It was thought to be the first death of a protester in custody as a result of the demonstrations that began across the country 2 weeks ago. Iranian authorities have arrested more than 1,000 people and at least 21 people have been killed in the unrest. There were widespread reports of torture and murder in Iranian jails following the violent crackdown on the 2009 protests over a disputed presidential election. Iranian officials later acknowledged 3 detainees were beaten to death. Now, the United Nations Relief Agency, which is focused solely on humanitarian relief to Palestinian refugees, now finds itself in an uncomfortable spotlight amid criticism from Israel and threats from the U.S. to cut its funding. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he agrees with President Donald Trump's criticism of that agency, adding that the UN agency should be a thing of the past. VOA's Cindy Sain reports from the State Department.
Palestinians reacted angrily to President Donald Trump's recognition last month of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, saying the decision made clear Washington can never be an honest broker in any potential Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. Trump is now frustrated and threatening to cut off hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. aid to Palestinians if they don't return to the negotiating table, as the U.S. ambassador to the UN indicated.
I think the president has basically said that he doesn't want to give any additional funding or stop funding until the Palestinians are agreeing to come back to the negotiation table.
UNRWA spokesman Chris Gunnis told VOA his understanding is that the U.S. has not yet made a decision on cutting funds. But he added such a move could hurt 5 million refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip.
I mean, if UNRWA were to stop functioning, 500,000 children would not receive a daily education around the Middle East. 9 million people would not get their doctor consultations, which is what our doctors provide every year. 38,000 people would not receive microfinance loans.
However, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu blasted the agency Sunday.
UNRWA is an organization that is perpetuating the Palestinian refugee problem. It is also perpetuating the alleged right of return narrative with a goal to terminate the state of Israel. And therefore, UNRWA has to pass from the world.
UNRWA spokesman Gunnis rejects this view.
This idea that a humanitarian organization can somehow perpetuate a refugee crisis and push an agenda doesn't really square with what you see on the ground, which is UNRWA working with 500,000 students to deliver an education every day.
If the U.S. cuts off its funding, Gunness says UNRWA will continue its work, but will find it difficult to maintain services at current levels. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
Well, as Britain's 2019 exit from the European Union inches closer, it is looking to carve out a new role for itself on the world stage. Many analysts say it could struggle to retain its influence as other world powers demand greater representation in global bodies like the United Nations. But as Henry Ridgwell reports, the British government insists it is looking to build global alliances beyond Europe.
Punching above its weight, a phrase once used by a British Foreign Secretary to describe his country's role on the world stage, often repeated since. But the punch could be losing power.
Leaving the EU means that the UK could now be seen as a medium-sized economy in an increasingly polarized world where there are massive economic blocs. You have the United States, you have China, you have the EU. In the coming century, you'll also have India, the rise of South America and Africa to compete as well. What will the UK's place be?
McDonough says a measure of Britain's fading clout was its November loss of a judge at the International Court of Justice. After a long battle at the United Nations, London withdrew its candidate. An Indian judge took the place occupied by Britain since the ICJ's inception in 1946.
The way the powers game works now is decidedly different from that of 1945. And we have to question whether the UN Security Council will continue in this form for much longer.
But most analysts say it is unlikely Britain will lose its permanent seat on the UN Security Council anytime soon.
Britain's permanent seat on the Security Council is safe. Most of the big powers in the Security Council, including the United States and China, don't want to see any serious reforms to the institution in the foreseeable future.
Britain insists its post-Brexit ambition is to create a global Britain.
On the one hand, the British Foreign Service will be able to invest more resources in UN affairs now that they are going to be less focused on the EU. But on the other hand, without the support of 27 other countries, the British are going to find it much harder to influence debates over humanitarian affairs, development or security through the UN.
A foretaste came in June when many EU countries failed to vote with Britain on a resolution over its claim to the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean. Britain needs to keep Europe on side, argues Gowan.
If the British are seen to be simply cozying up to the Americans, they are going to lose a lot of goodwill from their European partners pretty quickly.
In seeking a new role on the world stage, analysts say Britain will need to forge new alliances while keeping old friends close and try to weather turmoil back home. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, just days into 2018, the race for the U.S. president in 2020 is already making headlines. Speculation is swirling around media mogul Oprah Winfrey as a possible candidate after a starring speech Sunday at the Golden Globe Awards, where she spoke passionately about empowering women while receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. A U.S. Senator is one of our fans.
And so I'm really grateful to what she said, and I think she's a real leader, and I think her voice is powerful and important, and whatever she wants to do, she should do.
Well, President Trump's daughter Ivanka praised Winfrey's speech in a late Monday tweet. Although Winfrey is not officially a candidate for 2020, some close friends reportedly say she is thinking about it. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Now coming up, social media's impact on children. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
This is BizBeat.
For the first time, farmers in Gaza Strip are harvesting their own pineapples. Not only that, they're much cheaper than what shoppers have been used to. The project, started by a Dutch government with the UN Agriculture Organization, funded 6,000 pineapple saplings. But Gaza's been under an economic blockade while suffering from salty and contaminated water. Musa Al-Jabda oversees the project. He says this type of pineapple saves water in the Gaza Strip and provides a harvest with high economic income for Palestinian farmers. Imported Israeli pineapples cost 15 to 25 shekels. But now, fruit shop owner Imad Ashar says shoppers buy the homegrown Gaza product for 5 to 15 shekels. He says poor and rich people can eat it. The first batch of pineapples took 15 months to grow, but it took 4 years to make them good enough to market. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with some disturbing news on how surgery, or rather having surgery in Africa. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. In a study published recently in the Lancet Medical Journal, researchers say patients undergoing surgery in Africa are more than twice as likely to die following an operation than the global average. They say an average of 1% of patients die after surgery worldwide, compared to 2.1% for patients in Africa. In the largest study of its kind ever undertaken in Africa, researchers analyzed data of over 11,000 adult patients in 25 countries, including Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. The study reveals that patients in Africa undergo surgery that is, quote, more minor and have fewer complications. The most common surgery is cesarean delivery, and infection was the most common post-surgery complication. The researchers note that lack of medical staff and facilities to spot complications after the surgery are some of the main problems. Now, two major Apple investors, New York-based Jana Partners LLC and the California State Teachers Retirement System, have urged the iPhone maker to take action to curb growing smartphone addiction among children. In an open letter to Apple, they say there is growing concern about the effects of gadgets and social media on youngsters, and the company must offer more choices and tools to help children fight addiction to its devices. The letter cited various studies and surveys on how the heavy usage of smartphones and social media negatively affects children's mental and physical health. Examples include a decreased ability of students to focus on educational tasks and higher risks of suicide and depression. Meanwhile, researchers in Europe and the United States say the use of social media among preteens and teenagers is on the rise, while internet companies, authorities, and parents are slow to recognize its potentially harmful impact. VOA's George Putich reports.
Today's children grow up in a world much different than the world their parents grew up in.
I use WhatsApp, so I'm in a few groups with all of my school friends.
I use Instagram and WhatsApp.
I use like WhatsApp, normal message, Skype, and Google accounts.
Experts say the need to be in constant contact through social media can have an adverse impact on those unprepared for potential emotional stress. According to a new report by the Children's Commissioner for England, the pressure to be accepted, measured by the number of likes, can be harmful.
Well, I'd like schools to have compulsory
digital literacy classes during year 6 and year 7 as children move from primary school into secondary school. Schools have been very good about teaching children about safety online, but less so about the emotional challenges.
The worst side effect on emotionally unstable children is suicide, which among teens in the US rose sharply between 2010 and 2015, although the relation with social media has not been scientifically confirmed. Researchers note that another side effect of spending a lot of time online is sleep deprivation. Social media often insists that their users must be over 13, but it is too easy to get around it.
They need to go further and they need to do more. Of course, parents need to have a role here as well by talking to their children, making sure they understand well before age 13 what the dangers, issues and benefits of being online are.
But many parents do not know what to do, saying they also need training.
We didn't have anything like that when we were growing up. Parents really don't get much help apart from unless they're in the industry themselves, and so we are sort of a bit out on a limb.
Researchers say one of the best ways to counter internet addiction is encouraging children to be more active in sports. George Putic, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Yeah, and I'll stay on Twitter so I can be with you, Lenore. Thanks a lot for joining us today with those very helpful health reports. And remember to join Lenore Moudou every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The latest and hottest tech breakthroughs coming soon to a store near you. We'll be right back.
Cyclone Ava hits Madagascar, kills 29, displaces thousands, and causes widespread damage and flooding. In Nigeria, police fires tear gas and clashed with protesters during a demonstration by Shiite Muslims in Abuja on Monday. In the Netherlands, the preliminary appeal hearing in the case of Jean-Pierre Bemba, the ex-Congolese leader convicted of war crimes and crimes against humanity, starts at the International Court of Justice. A train crash on the outskirts of South Africa's commercial hub, Johannesburg, leaves more than 200 people injured. Finally, in Kenya, conservationists count endangered Brevi zebras. Their numbers currently stand at around 2,350.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, top trends at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas include artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and mobility tech. That's where Sophia comes in. A multinational team of scientists and engineers are fine-tuning her appearance and the algorithms that enable her to smile, blink, and refine her understanding and communication. Her skin is made of a nanotech material dubbed Frubber, short for flesh rubber, that has flesh-like bouncy texture mimicking human skin. Cameras in her eyes and a 3D sensor in her chest help her see. Now, the processor that serves as her brain combines facial and speech recognition, natural language processing, their speech synthesis, and a motion control system. One except taking a taxi through Las Vegas doesn't sound all that futuristic, but this one is driving itself. Ride-hailing company Lyft is teaming up with mobility tech firm Aptiv to bring self-driving taxis to the Consumer Electronics Show. They claim their fully automated point-to-point ride-hailing experience is a first of its kind. Users can hail a ride and select their destination using a smartphone app. A safety driver occupies the front seat, but the car uses automated driving technology to change lanes, turn, and much more. It has been tested in complex challenges such as highway mergers, maneuvering with pedestrians and cyclists, and staying on course while in a tunnel. Now, this little robot is making a big impression at the show. Buddy, made by French startup Blue Frog Robotics, is a Google Assistant voice-controlled robot that can roam around a family home. The robot can turn on music, answer simple questions, and even show a live feed of the house when the owners are away. Meanwhile, the Orbit Wheels and Hover Trucks mobility device are on trend and bound to get more popular as users get lazier. At least that's what the company behind the gadgets hopes. And that's what's trending today. Now, at CES, the large consumer electronics show happening this week in Las Vegas, companies are showing off their latest products and services amid a crush of visitors. One theme this year is everything can be made better by adding sensors and internet connectivity. VOA's Michelle Quinn reports.
A futuristic car controlled by a tablet and simple hand gestures. Byton is the buzz at this year's Consumer Electronics Show.
As you can see, there are only 5 gestures to control the system, and they all come very natural.
Byton is described by its founders as a smart device. You do not have to go far to find yet another smart device on display at what organizers say is the largest global gathering of innovation. More than 170,000 people, 1/3 of them from outside the U.S., are at this Las Vegas show to get their hands on these new gadgets.
So what's the application? What's the purpose? Purpose is for making calls and answering calls. So is this tethered to my phone? Yes, Bluetooth.
Fair Sai is at CES to show how a simple mirror has evolved.
I'm here to demonstrate Hi Mirror. It is the world's very first smart beauty mirror. Just by taking a photo, Hi Mirror will be able to analyze and keep track of the healthiness of your skin.
From head to toe, you can be outfitted with smart devices. DigitSoul sells an insole with a sensor connected to a smartphone.
The worker can put this in his shoe, and his shoe becomes smart and connected to his smartphone to detect all the activity of the worker and understand why he has ankle pain, back pain, or all kind of pain. If a soldier fall down because he gets injured, the shoe will immediately send a message to his team to rescue him.
Smart cars, smart mirrors, smart shoes. More indications that we are living in an ever-connected world. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, Las Vegas.
And that's it from us. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Liquid boils when it is heated to a certain temperature.
Boils down to this.
So Jonathan and Anna are probably talking about cooking. Or are they?
I got a job offer.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thanks. But the job is in California. All my friends and family are here in DC.
Look.